Hello, hello. Welcome to another Monday. Running a few minutes behind from a busy morning of client sessions. So if you guys are enjoying a holiday off or have a normal work schedule, I appreciate you joining in maybe on your lunch break. I got a chance to post today's topic to my story. If you've been following along, we've really been diving in, and I've been seeing a lot more around the concept around things like appetite, especially as it comes to some of the New Year's resolutions, a lot of the diet strategies out there, and even some of the more kind of quick fix culture. I know I did a live a few weeks ago around some of the weight loss drugs that are even getting popular. We talked about things like semaglutide and Ozempic and Wegovy and some of those different weight loss drugs that really act as appetite suppressants. And then with that conversation, we got to really build into some conversations around working or living in a way that's out of alignment with our natural hormonal cycles and what happens as some downstream consequences when we do that, which then led us into our conversation last time around this understanding of weight loss resistance, right? When truly we get to a place where our body and our metabolic system is so out of alignment with our natural circadian or infradian rhythms as males and females that it starts to make compensations that we're not super stoked about. One of those being kind of that weight loss resistance pattern where the body just truly doesn't feel safe letting go of some of those fat resources that it's worked so hard to build, right? So building on these conversations around some of these, like I said, weight loss drugs, some of our extreme dietary patterns that cause us to live out of alignment with our hormones and help us, on this fast track towards things like weight loss resistance. I wanted to bring a little bit more detail around from call it more of a natural or holistic view, what we really want to think about when it comes to appetite. Appetite and willpower, they get into this kind of messy mental health space that I love jumping into with my clients. So today will be a little bit about physical health, yes, but you'll also hear a lot of mental health undertones, especially as I work with individuals that have done a ton of dieting. They've done a lot of these things that are living out of alignment with their natural circadian and infradian rhythms, and through a long history of under eating, over exercising, skipping meals, cutting out entire food groups, long-standing elimination diets, under fueling their basal metabolic rate, all of these things that we do in just these more what I would call desperate attempts to see success on the scale really drive us to this place where our body is out of alignment. And one of those things that can get thrown out of alignment along with it is appetite. Appetite is our superpower, but in today's diet world, I see so many strategies that are there to try to shut it off, as if appetite is a bad thing. It's something to be ashamed of. It's something to be hidden, especially maybe I'm more sensitive to it as a female and working with a lot of females. I know it's definitely one of those conversations where it's just taboo for a woman to have a robust appetite. And I think then we get into this mode where we feel like we should shut it off, or we should try to quench that appetite, or we should try to suppress that appetite. And when we do that, no good things tend to happen, right? Our body is a very adaptive machine, so it's going to adapt to what you do. So if you chronically tell it to underfuel, you chronically tell it you're going to feed it less, you chronically tell it you're going to run it into the ground and expend all of this energy fueling exercise and caring for other people and putting yourself last, then guess what? Your metabolism gets very, very efficient on a very small amount of energy. And then when we try to lose weight, it goes nowhere. When we try to have energy, there's none to be had. And so it can't come as a surprise to us because our body is working for us. It really is responding exactly how it should. And that's, I think, something that I always try to point out to individuals is like, well, let's first come to the table. I know we don't maybe feel the way we want to feel or look the way we want to look, but let's at least celebrate that our body has our back. Our body is doing exactly what it should be doing in this scenario based off of how we're treating it, based off what we're telling it to do on a regular basis. We just need to backtrack a little bit and learn how do we tell it a different story, because then it will behave different. So as we dive into today, again, it's kind of building on some of our conversations of what are some of the things that we do that live out of alignment with our hormonal rhythms, and how does that build things like weight loss resistance. And then in that deep state of weight loss resistance, I see a lot of people get very desperate and frantic and anxious around seeking out strategies that can help. And then unfortunately, I think they get led down a path. The more desperate we are, the more extreme of approaches we tend to take. And that's when I start to see people get into some of these more like extreme ways to suppress appetite, eat the least amount possible, and move the most amount possible. So I want to let you know, how do we naturally tap into appetite? What should our appetite feel like? And getting back into touch with that and recognizing how our body actually has built-in natural mechanisms to control hunger and satiety. And again, when we're living in alignment with that, it's not something that we have to shut off. It's not something that we have to be ashamed about because we feel back in the driver's seat. So I want to put you guys back in the driver's seat of your health and hormones, but particularly today, put you back into the driver's seat of some of those appetite stimulating hormones so that you can feel comfortable and confident of really working with a natural appetite and not just suppressing. So when we think about these terms or these badges that I hear people wear all the time, I hear people come in, they're like, I'm an emotional eater, I'm a stress eater, I'm a binge eater, I'm a sugar addict. And I just see these as labels that people are coming in and kind of wearing on their forehead, wearing on their shirt. And it's something that we've started to kind of assign to our character now. And it's like, okay, how many of these labels of emotional eater, stress eater, binge eater, sugar addict, how many of those labels are true versus how many of those labels are our biology? Our biology drives behaviors. We have to recognize that so that we start to kind of step back a little bit from being completely stuck in our head around this and recognize, hey, it's just our biology driving behaviors. We just have to come to the table and figure out what that biology is. And when we can understand what that biology is that's driving some of those behaviors that aren't leading us to the health outcomes that we want, now we can really, like I said, kind of take back that control and not feel like our appetite controls us, but that we control it by working in alignment with how the body systems are set up. But to do that, we have to be able to take a step back and be okay with maybe unlearning some things that we've held as truths before, or unlearning some things that diet culture has, again, kind of ingrained in us as normal, when in reality, some of those behaviors are not normal. So let's kind of start with just a big overarching defining some terms on like, what is appetite? Appetite is very, very individualized. It is what I would call, just like pretty much anything in the health space, there is a bell curve to appetite. I don't want someone's appetite non-existent. That's not healthy, right? How are we going to get energy? How are we going to stimulate digestion? How do we have any sort of micronutrient or macronutrient needs being met if we're just not eating, right? So too little of an appetite, no bueno. But then we kind of can get on the other side of this optimal bell curve where some individuals do feel out of control of their appetite and they feel like they're never satiated. They feel like like they have an overconsumption problem. Again, that can really mess with individuals' headspace as well too. Some of those more like binge eating patterns. So I would say appetite is more that green zone, right in the middle. I want a natural appetite, but one that feels satiated by meals. So what is that appetite based off of? It's based off of age, gender, activity levels, your body size, like specifically like body fat percentage. So amount of muscle to body fat percentage will be based off of that. Obviously, more muscle, more metabolic rate, bigger appetite. And also your past diet history. We'll talk about this when we define some of these appetite hormones. The more you diet, the hungrier you become. Wow, what a novel concept that our body actually drives you to seek out food during periods of time where we fast it to death. It's like, that's a natural thing. Thank you, body, for doing that. That is completely normal. We tried, though, to fight against that. And so then every diet attempt gets more and more and more extreme. And then we feel like a failure when in reality, it's our biology not really digging that and saying that, skirt, put the brakes on. This is not how we're going to achieve this. We need to find a better way. So know that appetite is one of those physical markers that I use. I call it one of those biomarkers where I ask individuals on intake forms, do you wake up with a morning appetite? That's a good sign, by the way. If you're not waking up with a morning appetite, that's a sure sign of high cortisol, high adrenaline state. Do you feel full and satiated by your meals? Do you feel like your hunger builds throughout the day? All of those types of things. Do you notice times where your cravings or your appetite is bigger than other meals? All of those things can really tell us a lot. I would say, I hate to use the word normal, but that bell curve, what I want people to get to a place of is a natural appetite where you do wake up in the morning hungry. Absolutely. You just came off of an overnight fast. I would expect that. I also would expect someone that feels full and satisfied for anywhere from 4 to 6 hours by their meal without an excessive need to snack or energy slumps between meals. So if you're someone that's like, oh, wow, I do wake up with a morning appetite, but I feel like I have to eat like every couple hours throughout the day. Or I feel like I eat breakfast and then I'm snacking a couple hours later. Or I feel like I eat dinner and I want to snack my way to bedtime. Like those would be some of those appetite signals that we would want to try to regulate so that we feel hungry when we wake up, but we eat a meal and I feel full and satisfied for 4 to 6 hours. I'm not even thinking about food. And then a nice gentle hunger alerts me right around that 4 or 5 hour mark. Right? So if we're feeling off on those, you're like, oh yeah, no, my appetite is all over the place. It does not feel like a little child's roller coaster at the carnivore with these little like humps along the road. It's like, I feel like I'm riding like this Worlds of Fun, Devil's Revenge roller coaster. It's like, okay, then we probably have some work to do when it comes to appetite hormones. But again, don't feel like this is an internal willpower thing. Your biology drives behavior. So it's just a matter of us digging back and figuring out where did the biology go awry, right? So lots of different things can kind of go awry when we think about appetite signaling. Our body is very, very well designed to eat when we're hungry and stop when we're full. But we actually need to have that fuel get to our cells in order for that feedback to get back to the brain, because the brain is always going to be the boss. The brain is what is dictating hunger, satiety, and fullness. So I would say some of the biggest factors that are going to throw this off: chronic dieting, under eating. And when I say under eating, it's not just a calorie conversation. It's, are we eating enough protein? Are we eating enough fiber? Are we getting basic macro and micronutrient, vitamin and mineral needs met? Because deficiencies there is also, like I said, under eating. Really just long periods of what our body determines as low energy availability. There's X amount of energy and stress going out and very little energy coming in. So that discrepancy, I would call that a low energy availability state. So chronic dieting, under eating, over exercising, under fueling your basal metabolic rate, periods of like binge and restricting, that can throw off appetite as well too. Poor sleep, erratic sleep and wake times, unmanaged stress, excessive alcohol and caffeine intake. All of these things are appetite signalers. So we want to go back to the table and really understand, okay, why did these things kind of go awry, and where can we start to bring things back to normal? I do not want you waking up in the morning and not feeling hungry or no appetite until like 10, 11 o'clock in the morning. I don't want you fasting through the morning or subsiding off of coffee and caffeine. I don't want you feeling like you have to eat every 2 hours or you get hangry and you get shaky or lightheaded. I don't want you waking up in the middle of the night. I've heard that quite a bit, waking up in the middle of the night and feeling hungry, or waking up in the middle of the night and physically eating. Some people even not even remembering that they ate in the middle of the night. Or just binge eating tendencies where you feel like, I hear this all the time where individuals say, oh, the wheels fall off at 3 or 4 o'clock. I'm good all day, which really means you under ate all day. I'm good all day. And then by 3 or 4 o'clock, I'm ravenous and I eat my way out of house and home. It's like, I'm not worried about that 3 or 4 o'clock. I'm worried about what happened before that, right? Probably some missing pieces of the puzzle there. And we want to address those first. We can't just say, I'm a sugar addict, I'm going to take out sugar. I hear this all the time. Someone's like, I'm a sugar addict, I need to do a 10-day sugar detox. I'm like, that's not going to fix it. You can't just like take the sugar out and expect that, one, you're going to live in a world where you're never tempted by sugar again. And also taking the sugar out doesn't fix the reason why your body is physically driving you towards carbohydrate sources. We have to take that off. And now all of a sudden the sugar cravings kind of fix themselves. I'm not saying that these things don't sound good. Like sweets might still sound good, but I want us to be able to feel in control of that appetite. So we've kind of learned of what are some of those things that aren't normal when it comes to appetite, and really building this picture of like, ooh, wow, that sounds great to be able to go throughout my day, to wake up gently hungry, to eat a breakfast, to not think about food and not crash for 4 to 5 hours, to fuel myself again and be able to just ride more of a gentle roller coaster throughout the day. That's what we want, more of the low humps. But in order to get there, we have to kind of understand some of the hormones involved and how these hormones work, right? It goes back to the biology. So I'll keep it super simple. Let's start with some of our hunger, satiety hormones. We have our hormone called ghrelin. Ghrelin is really easy to remember because ghrelin makes your stomach growl. Right? So it is our hunger hormone. Now, ghrelin is secreted in your stomach, and it goes to the brain when our stomach is stretched, right? Our stomach is a pouch. It is meant to stretch when food is in our stomach. And when it stretches, the walls of the stomach have these receptors. They're called mechanoreceptors. So they sense stretch and they secrete ghrelin. Ghrelin goes to the brain and it's like, well, we're full and satisfied. All good. We can shut off that appetite. So ghrelin is usually maximized about an hour after we eat. But imagine diet culture getting a hold of us and telling us like, eat small, eat like a bird. Here's your protein bar. That's your meal. And it's like, that filled you up like, that much? Like, did your stomach ever really feel stretch eating a protein bar or drinking a protein shake? And you're like, oh, that's a meal. I'm like, that was liquid. I'm like, that went straight through your stomach. Your stomach never stretched at all. There was never like a pause. Oh, we're full. Wow. And that satiety hormone goes to the brain. So that can really be a downfall for some individuals that get on those diets of more like protein bars, protein shakes, skipping meals, the stomach not feeling physically stretched or full at regular intervals throughout the day. So they're not ever getting that ghrelin appetite response, right? So then they always feel hungry. Of course, you always feel hungry. Your stomach is never stretched. Your body never secretes ghrelin. You never get that satisfying feeling, right? Other hormones called leptin. Leptin is our nature's kind of natural appetite suppressant, right? It is secreted from our fat cells and they travel to the brain. That tells the body, hey, energy is all good down here. We have plenty of energy in storage for later, no problems. I would say leptin gets off when we tend to throw off those signals, specifically that confuses our fat cells around the quality of food that we consume. So when we get ourselves into some of the low quality foods, yes, that can even be like processed protein bars and protein shakes, highly palatable carbohydrates like your chips and your brownies and your cookies, or kind of some of those highly inflammatory type processed foods. Those get shuttled straight into our fat cells, and then we get what's called a leptin resistance, where our body is starved of the right type of energy. It constantly tells our brain we're still hungry, even though we've eaten enough calories. We haven't eaten enough nutrients, right? This is a typical classic picture of someone being overfed yet undernourished. That's leptin resistance, right? So there's no problem that we're consuming enough calories in this situation. Our body's just not seeing the right nutrient density to get the signaling to the brain. We're getting food in, but the body's not happy with the type of food that's coming in. So it just continues to ask for more until it gets the right type. We just usually don't intercept that signal very well, so we continue to fuel on more of those highly processed, low nutrient dense foods, and then it leaves us feeling hungry, but calories keep coming in, so weight keeps packing on. That's a concept of leptin resistance. We also have some of these hormones that are more of the active hormone that is found in a lot of these weight loss drugs, like your semaglutide, your Ozempic, your Wegovy. All of these are what we call GLP-1 agonist drugs. GLP-1 is a hormone that's secreted in your small intestine, again, when we eat protein and fat. When protein and fat flow through the small intestine, we get this satiety response. GLP-1, one of our satiety hormones, is secreted from the gut, travels to the brain, and is like, ooh, we got some really good stuff showing up in the small intestine. All good. We're full and satiated. You can calm the appetite response. So there's other hormones that act in the small intestine too. There's GLP-1, which I mentioned. I mentioned that one first because that's exactly what a lot of these weight loss drugs act on. But to me, in my head, I'm starting to think about it's like, okay, if we know that we can activate these hormones naturally too, then there's probably a really great opportunity to learn how do we maybe use some pharmaceutical interventions for this particular appetite hormone, but also how do we do it naturally by just learning how do we fuel our body with the right stuff, right, to control our appetite naturally. So there's some GLP-1, another one called CCK, and one called PYY. These are just little hormones that are secreted in the small intestine. They all play a role in satiety response, and multiple studies have found that they are secreted in largest amounts when we consume adequate protein and fat. Yay, right? So all good stuff there. Of course, other hormones are going to come into play too. Stress hormones, which is why some people have a really big appetite when they're more stressed. They're more of the emotional eater, or they might have that stress signal shut off because cortisol does shunt the blood flow away from the digestive organs. That's a little bit more person to person dependent on whether they have big swings one way or the other. For women, there's also some appetite regulation in estrogen, which is why different parts of your menstrual cycle, if you are still an actively menstruating female, it's totally natural that in the first part of your menstrual cycle where estrogen is the highest, you're not as hungry, right? It's a nice calm, cooling, it's kind of an appetite suppressant, but man, when the second half of that cycle hits and after we ovulate, we call it that PMS window, that 10 days before we bleed, and progesterone is highest. Whoa, our basal metabolic rate increases. Progesterone likes it that way. Our insulin sensitivity is a little bit different in the second half of the cycle, naturally, because progesterone likes it that way. But yet, we freak out because we're a little bit hungrier during that second half of the cycle, but yet we don't allow ourselves to embrace that as women. And so we fight against it, right? Again, this is us working out of alignment with our natural hormonal rhythms. So then the second half of that cycle, instead of just like, I don't know, maybe plumping up my breakfast a little bit that day and plumping up my lunch a little bit that day, we try to convince ourselves that we're not as hungry that second half of our cycle. And then in the evening, the wheels fall off and we dive into the pantry snacks and a whole pint of Ben and Jerry's. And then we feel guilty and shameful for it. And it's like, oh, it's PMS. It's like, yeah, but if you recognize that the second half of your cycle, you're supposed to be a little bit hungrier, we can just work with that instead of fight against it. And, I don't know, maybe put a strategic couple hundred extra calories throughout your day instead of going ham on 500 to 800 calories at night of junk. So those are the types of things, like I said, that I help people understand is our biology drives our behaviors. We don't have to wear these like emotional eater, binge eater, stress eater, sugar addict labels as like shameful badges. We have to go back to the drawing board and say like, okay, my appetite is off. My appetite hormones are off. But why? Why? My appetite feels a little different. I'm not hungry when I should be, so then I feel more ravenous or over hungry when I shouldn't be. And I'm not able to find that good middle ground. I feel like I'm really enduring some big swings and it's playing with my mental game too. So that's where, again, when we understand how biology and digestion work and we understand, oh, I do need to eat meals that contain stomach stretch. How do I do that in a smart and mindful way? Oh, I do need to eat at regular intervals. Oh, my satiety hormones do feel better when I'm eating adequate amounts of protein and fat, right? So it's like once we come to the table and understand this, and this is the basis of my nutritional strategies. And when I say that I work in nutritional medicine with hormones in mind, this is what I mean. I get you back in alignment with how your biology should be, help you understand how your body works. And instead of following all of these different like quick fix patterns that really are just pushing you out of alignment with your natural hormones, they may feel great for a minute, but it's like they work until they don't because our body recognizes it's not in alignment. This isn't going to be a long-term strategy. So if you feel like you've kind of been at mercy of your appetite, or you feel like you've been led down the road to feel like your appetite is shameful or something that needs to be suppressed or turned off, or you're somebody that has in the past really struggled with some of these labels around emotional eating, binge eating, or sugar addict, I encourage you, like I said, reach out because there is hope. If you're interested, like I said, in looking for help, I have a ton of different resources. If you go to the bio page or you go to my Instagram bio page, there's a link there. You can find some quick download resources on some free webinars that I've made on Renew University. You can apply to work with me one-on-one. Lots of different options out there to really make sure that you're feeling comfortable and confident, not only tackling your health and wellness goals here at the beginning of 2023, but truly for a lifetime. And just like I said, get back in alignment with how your health and hormones should work. And I promise you, it's a hell of a lot easier than a lot of people make it out to be. So hopefully that little science lesson around appetite and satiety was helpful for you, and getting you, like I said, some information around getting back into alignment. So happy Monday, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your holiday Monday if you're off today, and we will see you same time next week.